penthouse lay in serene silence, a stillness that transformed the bustling city beyond into a distant realm. Lena reclined upon the grand king-size bed, enveloped in a world of her own making. The black silk robe, a gift from her husband during their enchanting days in Paris, gently parted as she settled back against the plush pillows. As the clock struck just beyond the hour of 9:30 in the evening, the master bedroom was enveloped in the soft, golden embrace of city lights cascading through the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows. In the distance, the skyline of Chicago sparkled like a jewel, yet Lena's gaze was turned inward, her body thrumming with a subtle, restless vitality. The room was infused with a delicate hint of lavender body oil, its soothing fragrance intertwining with a richer, more profound essence that lingered in the atmosphere. Her breath flowed with a calm rhythm, each inhalation gentle and measured, while her movements were deliberate and unhurried, as though time itself had paused to embrace this fleeting instant. The silk robe flowed effortlessly, shimmering in the light as it parted, the fabric a gentle caress against her skin. Her mind wandered far away, while her body held onto a tightness that yearned for liberation. She allowed her head to tilt back, her fingers meandering in languid, absent patterns across her stomach. Her touch was gentle yet unwavering. The city's glow brushed gentle strokes across her skin, the warmth enveloping her as she surrendered to the rhythm's embrace. In the stillness, a sudden sharp click of the door handle shattered the silence. Lena halted, her hands pausing in the air, eyes widening in surprise, her heart racing as the sound pierced through the silence. For a fleeting instant, she whispered to herself that it was merely a trivial occurrence, perhaps the building adjusting itself or the wine playfully shaking the windows. But then, a heavy thud echoed as a gym bag hit the floor, twisting her stomach in a knot of dread. Jared lingered in the doorway, his silhouette gently illuminated by the warm glow of the hallway light. He wore gym clothes, his dark hair slightly damp, his chest rising and falling as if he had just finished a run. His eyes, deep and shadowy like his father's yet imbued with a gentler, youthful light, captured hers for a fleeting moment, then glanced downward before swiftly averting away. The silence that enveloped them was dense and weighty, creating an atmosphere where the air seemed almost too fragile to inhale. The ACSAG kicked on, stirring the hem of her robe and inviting a cool breeze to dance across her skin. Lena felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her heart racing fiercely within her chest. Yet, with determination, she sat up, drawing the robe tightly around her with a precise, intentional gesture. Jared's voice wavered, a gritty tremor lacing his words. With the deliberate clearing of his throat, he cast his eyes downward, as if the floor held secrets only he could understand. Did I leave my protein shake in here? It was a deception, and they both felt it deep within their hearts. In his room, the mini fridge was perpetually filled to the brim. Lena felt the constriction in her throat as she stood tall, her fingers clutching the smooth silk of her robe. "Your father's in Dubai until Friday," she said, her voice unwavering, even as her heart raced beneath the surface. It was a declaration, a whisper of truth, though she couldn't quite grasp for whom it was intended, him or herself. Jared remained silent, his jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment, she sensed he might utter something more. Yet, in a sudden twist, he pivoted with determination, marching out of the room and forcefully shutting the door in his wake. The echo danced through the penthouse, crisp and conclusive. Lena sat motionless on the bed, her heart pounding fiercely, her fingers quivering against the smooth silk of her robe. She could still sense the intensity of his gaze, a warmth in his eyes, the way they had hung in the air for her. The moment stretched on, lingering far too long. Her body pulsed with a vitality it had long been deprived of. The tension wound up like a spring, steadfast and unyielding. She cast her eyes upon the mirror hanging on the wall, her reflection gazing back at her with an air of intrigue. Her eyes sparkled with wonder, her cheeks glowed with excitement, and her lips were gently parted, as if ready to share a secret she bore no trace of shame. No, it was a tale of its own, a narrative unlike any other, something that stirred her insides and sent her heart racing. Lena released a shaky breath and reclined against the pillows, her fingers wandering absent-mindedly across her stomach. The suspense remained, yet she lacked the heart or the courage to see through what she had begun. Instead, she gazed up at the ceiling. The city lights weaving shifting patterns across the smooth surface. Her mind raced, replaying the moment over and over. The way Jared had gazed at her, the manner in which his voice had trembled, the way he had dashed away as though the very air around him were ablaze. She turned on to her sigh, enveloping herself in warmth, the silk rope cascading around her like a gentle embrace. The penthouse fell into a hush once more, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the soft echo of her heartbeat, whispered softly to her. She shut her eyes, attempting to banish the thoughts swirling in her mind, yet they remained, persistent and unyielding. As she slipped into a fitful slumber, a single thought lingered, refusing to fade away. The tale was far from its conclusion. 48 hours had slipped by since the event in the bedroom, and the penthouse exuded a palpable tension, as if the very atmosphere was suspended in anticipation. The dining table, it gleamed with a flawless brilliance, mirroring the gentle radiance of the pendant light above. Between Lena and Jared rested takeout containers filled with Szechuan beef and dumplings, steam rising gently from the lids. The aroma of garlic and chili all wafted through the air, yet neither of them appeared to observe. Jared sat across from Lena, his knee bouncing restlessly under the table, causing the chopsticks beside his plate to rattle in a rhythmic dance. He had not cast a glance in her direction since entering, his eyes glued to his meal or the surface of the table or the wall loomed behind her. Lena, in contrast, observed him intently, her fingers absent-mindedly swirling the Merlot in her glass, the wine's legs tracing the sides like delicate crimson veins. The air hung thick with unspoken words, a weighty pause that seemed poised to break at the slightest sound. Lena savored a deliberate sip of her wine, the sharp bitterness dancing on her tongue, and made the choice to shatter the silence. "We must confront this," she stated, her voice steady yet resolute. Jared's head lifted sharply, his dark eyes narrowing just a touch. "What is the address?" he murmured softly, jabbing at a dumpling with his fork. The soy sauce danced across the pristine linen tablecloth, yet he remained blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding beneath him. Lena leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on the table, her gaze unwavering. "You've kept a watchful eye on me ever since that fateful evening, as if you're anticipating my next move." "To what end?" he cut in, his voice a murmur, laced with a hint of something cutting. His knuckles turned pale as he clutched his fork tightly. "Shall I indulge in that sensation once more?" "Indeed, I am." The air was thick with unspoken truths, lingering like a heavy fog, and for a fleeting moment they remained still, caught in the weight of their silence. Lena's heart raced, yet her gaze remained steadfast. She was unable to dot in his gaze. There lingered an intensity unlike anything she had ever encountered, a force that sent her stomach into knots and stole her breath away. She savored another sip of her wine, the bitterness anchoring her in the moment. "Your father hasn't touched me in 6 months," she confessed, the words leaving a bitter aftertaste on her tongue. It was an unexpected revelation, the kind that slipped from her lips unbidden. Before she had a chance to rein them in, Jared's expression danced momentarily, a fleeting shadow crossing his features. For a fleeting moment, he averted his gaze, his jaw clenching as though he were engaged in a silent battle with the thoughts swirling within him. At last, when he found his voice, it emerged as a gravelly murmur, scarcely rising above a whisper. "I ended my relationship with Sarah, as thoughts of you lingered in my mind during our time together." He severed the connection, his jaw tightening, yet the intensity within his gaze completed the unspoken words, weaving a narrative all its own. Lena felt a flutter in her chest, her fingers gripping a wine glass with a newfound intensity. She was taken by surprise. She was taken completely by surprise by all of this. The room seemed to shrink in an instant, the walls pressing closer, the air heavy with an unspoken tension and an unsettling presence. Something she wasn't prepared to confront. With a delicate touch, she placed her glass upon the table, the unexpected clink resonating more prominently than she had anticipated. "Tomorrow," she declared, her voice unwavering even in the face of uncertainty. The way her heart raced in the quiet of my room, as the clock strikes 10 p.m. "We shall harmonize with the beats." Nothing else. Jared's gaze was fixed upon hers, his eyes deep and enigmatic. For a moment, he fell silent, and she pondered whether he might dispute her, if he would strive for greater things. Yet, he gave a slight nod, only a single time, a swift, resolute gesture. The hush that enveloped them was more profound than ever, the gravity of their shared decisions resting between them like an uninvited guest at the table. Lena nibbled at her food, not really hungry, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, each one a thread she couldn't quite weave together. Jared sat there, untouched food before him, his knee a restless rhythm beneath the table, eyes locked on the plate as if it held the answers he sought. The evening unfolded in a haze. The meal left untouched as the atmosphere grew heavy with unspoken words. As the last dish was removed from the table, a heavy silence enveloped them, words unspoken hanging in the air. The stillness enveloped them, thick with an unvoiced tension, a sense of destiny hanging in the air. As Lena stood at the sink, rinsing her wineglass under the tap, she glimpsed Jared's reflection in the window. He stood by the counter, arms crossed, eyes locked onto her with an intensity that spoke volumes. She sensed its weight, the heat radiating from it, sending a shiver cascading down her spine. She remained facing forward. With a gentle touch, she placed the glass down, her hands gliding over the surface as she dried them, each motion measured and intentional. "Sleep well, Jared," she spoke, her tone steady yet resolute. He paused, leaving her in a moment of uncertainty, pondering whether he might break the silence, whether he would dare to test the limits they had just established. Yet, he gave a slight nod, only a single time. As he pivoted to depart, the sound of his footsteps reverberated through the corridor. Lena lingered in the kitchen, her hands posed on the counter's edge, as thoughts swirled through her mind after he had left. The penthouse was quiet once more, yet the silence carried a new weight this time, electrifying, anticipating. With a trembling exhale, she extinguished the lights, and the darkness enveloped the room entirely. As she strolled down the hallway toward her bedroom, an unsettling sensation lingered in the air, whispering that a change had woven itself into the fabric of her connection with Jared. Something that cannot be undone. The following afternoon, the penthouse glimmered under a warm, golden sunlight, the sort that wrapped around you like a cozy blanket, making the world seem soft and slow. Lena glided through the space with a measured grace, her bare feet embracing the softness of the plush rug as she leaned down to nourish the fiddle-leaf fig nestled in the corner of the living room. She donned cut-off denim shorts and a cropped tank top, the fabric relaxed and easygoing. Yet, the way it hugged her figure revealed much more than it concealed. Jared lounged on the couch, his textbook sprawled open before him. Yet the pages remained untouched for nearly half an hour. He watched her every move, his eyes deep and inscrutable. Yet, the tightness in his jaw revealed the turmoil within. Lena sensed his gaze, intense and unwavering, and she welcomed it. Indeed, she embraced the moment, her movements transforming into a graceful dance, each action slow and intentional as she reached for the highest leaves of the plant. The hem of her shorts crept higher as she leaned forward, and a sharp intake of breath echoed from behind her. She remained facing away, offering no acknowledgement. yet a subtle smirk danced at the corner of her lips as she straightened and glided toward the kitchen. The fridge brimmed with bottles of water, and she reached for one. The cool plastic refreshing against her palm. With a deft twist, she removed the cap and savored a slow sip, a few drops escaping as she tilted her head back, embracing the moment. It trickled down her chin, cascading over her collarbones, and she let out a soft gasp. More for dramatic flair than anything else. Oh dear, she whispered softly. Placing the bottle aside and reaching for a paper towel, she noticed how Jared's gaze lingered on the water trails, his jaw clenching as he turned his eyes elsewhere. "You are playing dirty," he whispered, his voice thick with tension. Lena pivoted to meet his gaze, casually leaning against the counter. "I'm just thirsty," she replied, her tone sweet and innocent, yet the spark in her eyes hinted at something more. Her bare foot glided up his calf beneath the table, and in that moment, he became still, the textbook slipping from his mind. "Don't," he cautioned, yet his tone betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "Don't what?" she inquired, her voice playful, as her foot continued its leisurely, teasing journey up his leg. Jared's gaze was fixed upon hers, his eyes deep and fervent. "Have you ever considered this?" Lena smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips that made his breath catch. With a swift motion, she withdrew her foot and grasped her water bottle, abandoning him in that moment, his textbook left behind, heart pounding in anticipation. The afternoon unfolded in a haze of purposeful, measured movements. Lena reached for a high shelf, her fingers just grazing the edge, then bent down to retrieve a napkin that had slipped from her grasp and leaned over the counter, her eyes focused on a pen just out of reach. Every motion was deliberate, crafted to challenge Jared's determination, and with each instance, she noticed his eyes lingering, his jaw clenching as he struggled to avert his gaze. As dinner approached, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken words, a dense weight that lingered in the air, reminiscent of a brewing tempest ready to unleash its fury. In the stillness of the room, they dined quietly, the soft clink of cutlery against plates the sole melody accompanying their meal. Lena's foot brushed against his once more beneath the table, and this time, he held his ground. As the last dish was removed from the table, a heavy silence enveloped them, each lost in their own thoughts. The quiet that lingered between them was thick with unvoiced emotions, a tension that seemed destined to unfold. As Lena stood at the sink, rinsing her plate under the tap, she caught a glimpse of Jared's reflection in the window. He stood by the counter, arms crossed, his eyes locked onto her with an intensity that spoke volumes. She sensed its weight, the heat enveloping her, and a shiver danced down her spine. She remained facing forward, unyielding. With a gentle touch, she placed the plate down, her hands gliding through the air as she dried them, each movement measured and intentional. "My sanctuary. 10 in the evening. Do you recall?" she inquired, her tone steady yet resolute. With a single nod, he pivoted and strode away, the sound of his footsteps reverberating through the corridor. The hour inched toward 10, and Lena's bedroom was shrouded in a gentle twilight, the sole illumination coming from the soft flicker of the TV casting shadows on the far wall. She perched on the edge of the grand bed, her fingers dancing anxiously over the smooth silk sheets, weaving invisible tales with each delicate movement. The atmosphere was charged with expectation, a soft drone of the air conditioner barely cutting through the palpable tension that had been simmering between her and Jared throughout the day. The door let out a soft creak as it opened, and Jared entered, gently closing it behind him. He paused for a heartbeat, his eyes wandering across her form, her bare legs, the delicate strap of her nightgown slipping off one shoulder. The way she averted his gaze, he began to speak, but Lena interrupted him with a decisive shake of her head. "Come, take a seat," she beckoned, her tone steady yet resolute, motioning to the space beside her on the bed. Jared paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his mind before he comply, lowering himself onto the mattress while maintaining a deliberate space between them. The bed sank slightly as he settled in, and Lena sensed the warmth emanating from him. A palpable presence even without their bodies meeting. The remote quivered gently in her grasp as she aimed it at the television, the screen springing to life with a flicker. The menu for Forbidden's Family, Volume 12 emerged, its title striking and unyielding. Lena's heart raced, her throat constricting as she pressed play. The grainy film commenced, the camera gliding over an opulent bedroom before focusing on a woman in her 40s, her lace teddy revealing much yet holding an air of mystery. She rested against the desk, her hips gently swaying as she spoke to the young man sitting on the bed, her stepson. "Allow me to share with you the intricacies of anatomy," the actress whispered, her voice smooth and enticing. Lena's breath caught in her throat, her fingers clenching the sheets with intensity as the scene played out before her. The tension between her and Jared crackled in the air, a palpable force that made each breath feel heavy and charged with unspoken words. She sensed his gaze upon her, intense and unwavering, yet she remained fixated on the screen before her. The actress sighed gently, her voice laced with breathy pauses. "In that moment, darling," she whispered, her fingers gliding softly along her form. Next to her, Jared stirred, his breaths coming in fits and starts. Lena cast a fleeting look his way and noticed him awkwardly adjusting the waistband of his boxers. She averted her gaze swiftly, her cheeks aflame, yet the rustle of fabric cascading to the ground sent her heart racing. With a deep breath, she felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest, her fingers quivering as they brushed against the delicate fabric of her nightgown. The fabric caressed her skin as she slid it off, leaving her adorned only in a delicate pair of cotton lingerie. For a fleeting moment, she paused, her heart racing. Before allowing them to tumble to the floor, Jared's groan resonated through the mattress, causing Lena's breath to hitch at the sound. She sensed his eyes upon her, a heat radiating from his gaze. Yet she chose not to meet his stare. Instead, she turned her attention to the TV, her hand gliding slowly, hesitantly, as she endeavored to replicate the actress's graceful movements. In the stillness of the room, the only sounds that broke the silence were the uneven, ragged breaths of those present and the soft, distant hum of the television. Lena's heart raced in her ears, her body buzzing with a tension she hadn't experienced in years. She sensed Jared beside her, his every movement echoing her own, the warmth emanating from him clouding her thoughts. The actress on the screen emitted a piercing cry, her form bending gracefully as she ascended to the pinnacle of her performance. Lena's breath caught in her throat, her body quivering as she mirrored the moment. Beside her, Jared emitted a soft sound, and Lena's gaze darted toward him without her even thinking. His eyes were tightly shut, his jaw set firm, his body cord with tension. The silence that enveloped them was palpable, a weighty presence that hung in the air, thick with an unspoken tension that constricted the breath. Lena's body quivered, a delicate dance of nerves as she fought to find her rhythm once more. "It's time to rest," she urged, her voice trembling yet resolute. Jared paused, his eyes darting to her hand. He averted his gaze swiftly, a rush of color blooming on his cheeks as he rose and fumbled for his boxers, slipping them on with trembling hands. Without a word, he departed, gently shutting the door as he went. Lena sat motionless on the bed, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, her body still vibrating with the echoes of recent events. She cast a fleeting look at her fingers, a warm tide of color washing over her cheeks, the notion of Jared's gaze resting upon them. If only for a fleeting moment, the screen danced with light, the credits weaving their tale. Yet, Lena remained still. She lingered before the screen, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, each one a thread in a tapestry she couldn't quite weave together. The golden rays poured in through the expansive windows, illuminating the space with a warm glow. A penthouse, casting a warm golden glow over the sleek modern kitchen. Lena sat at the marble island, her coffee cup cradled between her hands, the steam curling lazily into the air, painting a picture of tranquility in the morning light. The warm, inviting fragrance of freshly brewed coffee danced through the air, intertwining with the rich, buttery scent of toast. Yet, her breakfast lay abandoned, her thoughts still swirling from the events of the night before. Jared stood across from her, his back turned as he meticulously spread butter on a slice of toast, each movement measured and intentional. The stillness enveloped them, thick with an unspoken energy that rendered the atmosphere almost suffocating. Lena's gaze danced toward him, eyes following the contours of his strong shoulders, the way his muscles rippled beneath his t-shirt as he shifted. She willed herself to turn her gaze, concentrating on her coffee instead. Last night's events replayed endlessly in her mind, like a faded film, the echoes of his voice lingering in the air. Inhaling deeply, feeling the warmth of his stare, her cheeks flushed at the recollection, and she savored a deliberate sip of her coffee, seeking solace in its sharp bitterness. "I wish to witness your completion this evening, Jared," he declared, his voice a quiet yet resolute whisper. Lena's coffee cup danced upon the marble counter, sending a few precious drops of the dark elixir cascading onto the immaculate surface. Her heart raced, and her breath hitched in her throat as she gazed intently at him. "That wasn't the agreement," she insisted, her voice trembling. Jared pivoted to meet her, his eyes capturing hers in an unbreakable connection. He savored the rich flavor, licking the butter from his thumb, a simple yet telling gesture. With a measured pace, Lena's stomach churned at the sight before her. "Agreements shaped," he declared, his tone steady yet resolute. The air between them buzzed with an electric tension, his words lingering like a heavy fog in the atmosphere. In the stillness, a profound quiet envelops the world. Lena's thoughts swirled, her heart thundering in her chest as she sought the perfect reply. She parted her lips to contest, to call to mind the limits they had established. But the words trapped in her throat. Jared's gaze held steady, his dark eyes piercing into hers with a fervor that clouded her thoughts. "Well," he urged, his voice gravelly. Lena paused, her fingers gripping her coffee cup with a sense of uncertainty. The mere idea of him observing her, his gaze following her every motion, sent a delightful shiver racing down her spine. It felt overwhelming, deeply intimate, and fraught with peril, yet she couldn't ignore the warmth that twisted within her belly at the thought. She began, her voice trembling, her eyes wandered, falling to the coffee that had spilled across the counter. "I shall ponder upon it." Jared remained silent, and for a fleeting moment, the stillness hung in the air, thick and unyielding. He nodded, a single, deliberate gesture, before returning his attention to the toaster, reaching for another slice of bread. The atmosphere in the room remained thick with tension. It lingered in the atmosphere, tense and charged, as Lena remained motionless at the counter, her coffee turning cold in her grasp. The remainder of the morning unfolded in a haze of uncomfortable pauses and fleeting looks exchanged between them. Lena attempted to immerse herself in her tasks, her laptop aglow before her. Yet her mind wandered repeatedly to Jared, to the way he had gazed at her during breakfast, the warmth in his eyes, the way his voice danced through the air, sending a delightful shiver down her spine. Jared, in his own way, appeared resolute in maintaining an air of normalcy, as if the world around him had not shifted at all. He glided through the penthouse with effortless elegance, his gym bag casually draped over his shoulder as he set out for his morning workout. Yet, Lena noticed how his eyes held onto her, how his jaw clenched when he believed she was unaware. As the evening approached, an unbearable tension hung between them, a palpable static energy that electrified the air. Lena wandered through the living room, her thoughts swirling like leaves caught in a tempest, each one a story waiting to be unraveled. As the clock chimed 10, Jared approached her bedroom door, knocking gently before entering, his presence enveloping the space as he crossed the threshold. Lena stood by the window, arms crossed, her heart racing within her chest. "Well," he urged, his voice deep and gravelly. Lena paused for a heartbeat, her eyes darting to his face. The fire in his eyes sent a shiver through her, yet she summoned the courage to hold his gaze. At last, she spoke, her voice a delicate murmur that barely reached the air. The evening air in the penthouse hung heavy with an unspoken tension, wrapping around the room like a shroud, making the walls feel as if they were inching closer, and the silence weighed down like a thick fog. Lena sat on the couch, the remote held lightly in her hand, her fingers dancing along its edge with a hint of unease. Jared reclined next to her, his demeanor relaxed yet his eyes keen, the sort of glance that sent her heart racing without a single word exchange. The television whispered gently, its glow spilling a delicate light throughout the room. They had settled on a time of 9, yet the term settled hardly conveyed the intricate dance of tension and connection that existed between them. Lena endeavored to persuade herself that this was merely another night, yet the recollection of the prior evening lingered, with Jared's unwavering gaze, and the way his breath had caught as he observed her, proving impossible to dispel. It hung in the air, a spectre that trailed her with each step she took. Yet another tale to unfold. Jared inquired, his demeanor relaxed, yet there was an undeniable sharpness in his voice. Lena paused, a moment of uncertainty flickering in her eyes before she finally nodded with a delicate flick of her fingers. She navigated the menu, a sense of tension creeping into her throat as the words "mature solitaire" illuminated the screen before her. The thumbnail stirred something deep within her, featuring a woman with a knowing smile, her posture inviting, confidence radiating even in the stillness of the image. Jared remained silent, yet Lena sensed his gaze upon her as she hit play. The film opened with a gentle sweep across a bedroom, the camera taking its time to capture the woman as she lay back on the bed. She wore a silk robe, the fabric parting gently as she stretched, her fingers gliding softly over her skin. The actress's gaze pierced through the lens, her smile dripping with allure as she spoke to the camera. "At times," she softly remarked, "a woman must tend to her own needs." Lena's breath caught in her throat, her fingers curling around the remote with a fierce intensity. She sensed Jared's presence beside her, his warmth enveloping her, his gaze locked onto the screen. The actress moved with intention, each gesture imbued with significance, and Lena felt her heart race as the woman's breath caught in her throat. "Duplicator." Jared spoke up unexpectedly, his tone steady yet resolute. Lena stood still, her heart racing within her chest. "What is it that you seek?" she inquired, her voice a mere whisper. "Duplicator," Jared reiterated, his voice firm and resolute. As she paused, he continued to speak. "Or I journey forth." The words lingered in the air, thick and conclusive, causing a knot to form in Lena's stomach. She sensed his gaze upon her, intense and filled with anticipation, and she understood he was entirely sincere. With a heavy heart, she placed the remote aside, her fingers quivering as they brushed against the hem of her nightgown. The fabric gracefully slipped from her shoulders, gathering at her waist before she allowed it to cascade down entirely. She paused for a heartbeat, her cheeks aflame, before finally lifting the final veil that separated her from the intensity of Jared's gaze. The actress on the screen danced to the rhythm that captivated all, her body curving gracefully as her touch became increasingly compelling. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she endeavored to mirror the motions, her movements hesitant at first, yet becoming more assured as she surrendered to the performance. Jared's choked gasp echoed in the air, a vivid sign that he was indeed watching. In the stillness of the room, The only sounds that broke the silence were the uneven, ragged breaths and the soft, distant hum of the television. "Keep going," Jared urged, his voice gravelly and determined. Lena complied, her body quivering as the tension wound ever tighter. The actress's moans enveloped the room, rich and enticing, and Lena's breath caught as she listened intently. As she ascended to her pinnacle, her form bending gracefully in the moment of release, the soft sound of Jared's groan drifted to her ears, a testament to the shared intensity of the experience. In a swift motion, he seized her arms, drawing her closer with an intensity that left no room for hesitation. In his direction, in a moment that caught her off guard, his kiss was a whirlwind of passion, a chaotic dance where his teeth graced her lip and his tongue boldly explored the depths of her mouth. Lena's tale. Her thoughts surged like a tempest. Yet she stood her ground, unyielding. In that moment, she returned his kiss, her fingers weaving through his hair as he pulled her from the couch and led her toward his room. The bedroom basked in the gentle illumination of the city's soft glow filtering through the window. Shadows elongated. Through the expanse, shadows danced, stretching into elongated, irregular forms upon the surfaces. The atmosphere hung thick in the air, pulsating with a subtle energy that made the room feel more confined than its true dimensions. Lena perched on the edge of the bed, her body still resonating softly from the events that had just unfolded in the living room. The sheet draped softly around her legs, her fingers wandering absently over its fabric, on the brink of it as she sought to find her balance. Her form, sculpted and resilient from countless hours of dedication, was tense, every muscle coiled as if bracing against the inevitable. Jared stood a few feet away, his back turned to her as he pulled off his shirt. The dim glow captured the lines of his shoulders, tracing the contours of his frame as he glided through the space. His breath came in fits and starts, his movements deliberate yet lacking a certain fluidity, as if he were engaged in a silent battle to maintain his composure. In check, as he pivoted to meet her gaze, his eyes found hers with an undeniable intensity, shadowy, gripping, and brimming with an enigmatic essence that caused a knot to form in her stomach. For a lengthy pause, silence enveloped them both. The stillness enveloping them was thick, the sort that seemed poised to shatter at the slightest shift in movement. Jared advanced, one foot following the other, his bare sawless whispering against the floor. His gaze remained locked on her, and Lena struggled to divert her eyes. "Are you truly certain about this?" he inquired, his voice a husky whisper, tinged with a hint of gravel. Lena halted, her fingers. The grip around the sheet grew stronger, her mind whirled, a chaotic mix of doubt and desire that created a palpable tension. "It's challenging to concentrate. Are you?" she inquired, her voice a whisper, almost lost in the air. Jared paused, his response lingering in the air. Instead, he shut the door. He closed the distance between them with a few purposeful steps, his hands finding their place on her shoulders as he softly guided her back onto the bed. Lena sensed her body melt into the mattress, his presence enveloping her, solid and warm. "I have been, indeed, for weeks," he whispered, his lips grazing her ear. His voice carried a gentle strength, each word wrapping around her like a comforting embrace, igniting a subtle warmth within. In a flurry of motion, they darted about, their actions tinged with urgency, as if the very essence of the moment threatened to elude their grasp. Jared's hands glided over her, his touch steady yet gentle, leaving a path of warmth followed them wherever they roamed. Lena's fingers pressed into his back, her breath coming in fits and starts as she surrendered to the cadence of it all. As the moment came to a close, Jared leaned heavily against her, his chest heaving as he struggled to regain his breath. Lena lay still, her fingers dancing lightly over his skin, her thoughts weaving through the haze of the moment, trying to form a coherent tale, an understanding of the events that had just unfolded. Jared adjusted his position, his head gently nestled against her chest. The warmth of breath caressed her skin. "Are you all right?" he inquired. His tone softened, almost tinged with uncertainty. Lena nodded, her fingers gliding through his hair. It was gentle, a touch moist from perspiration, and the feeling anchored her in the moment. "Indeed," she spoke, her voice trembling just a touch. Jared propped himself up on his elbows, his eyes as dark as the night sought hers out. "You're not," he declared, his tone firm and resolute. Lena swallowed, eyes falling to the hollow of his throat. It was complicated," she confessed, her voice a mere breath against the silence. Jared reached up, gently sweeping a strand of hair aside from her visage. The gesture was surprisingly tender, and it caused a tightness in her chest. "Intricate does not mean wrong," he declared, his voice unwavering. Lena gazed up at him, her eyes locking onto his. Yet she remained silent. Instead, she allowed her fingers to glide down his arm, her touch delicate yet assured. She could sense the tautness in his muscles, the vibrant energy that still coursed through his body, awakened something deep within her. Jared's gaze softened as he took in the details of her face, his thumb gently gliding over her cheek. "We can stop if you want," he said, his voice steady yet resolute. "Yet, if we continue on this path." He lingered for a moment, a subtle smile playing at the edges of his lips. "I can keep this going forever." The words flowed like a gentle breeze, wrapping around her, while the cadence of his voice stirred a flutter deep within her. Lena paused, her mind swirling with a flurry of thoughts. She felt the weight of the moment, a whisper urging her to retreat, to close the chapter before it unfolded into something deeper. Yet, the way his gaze lingered on her, as if she were the sole occupant of the room, perhaps even the entire universe, rendered resistance nearly impossible. The second thing unfolded with a deliberate pace, drawing attention and inviting contemplation. Jared's hands, he glided over her body with a gentle reverence, his touch infusing her skin with a comforting warmth. He whispered her name, the sound gentle and tender, igniting a flutter in her heart. His whispered words, "Knowing you'd feel this good," caught her off guard. The quiet intensity in his voice sent a faint shiver down her spine. Glide through her. Lena's fingers danced gently across his back, the sensation anchoring her as they rediscovered their rhythm once more. In the stillness of the room, the only sounds that filled the air were the soft rhythm of their breaths and the gentle creak of the bed beneath them. As the final moments faded away, they found themselves entwined in the stillness of the night, their forms intertwined, breaths gradually synchronizing in the quiet embrace of darkness. With Jared's arm gently wrapped around her waist, his head found a comfortable resting place on her chest. As Lena gazed up at the ceiling, her thoughts swirled like a tempest within her mind. The penthouse walls whispered their hidden tale, the stillness of the room a sharp counterpoint to the tumult they had just experienced. Lena's body radiated warmth, her skin alive with a gentle tingle from Jared's touch. Her thoughts swirled in a chaotic mix of guilt, desire, and an unnameable depth, a feeling she wasn't quite prepared to confront. Jared moved closer to her, his breath a gentle warmth against her skin as he placed a soft kiss on her shoulder. "Are you all right?" he inquired, his tone gentle. Lena lingered, her fingers dancing over the subtle patterns etched on his arm. "I don't know," she confessed, her voice a whisper, almost lost in the air. Jared remained quiet, his silence thick with the weight of unvoiced reflections. Instead, he drew her in tighter, enveloping her in his embrace. The embrace of his presence enveloped her, a soothing anchor in the midst of uncertainty, and Lena closed her eyes, allowing herself to fully embrace the moment. The room held a stillness, while the city beyond whispered a distant melody. Yet, the burden of their actions hung heavily in the air, an undeniable presence that neither could escape. Lena's mind raced, her thoughts weaving together a complex tapestry of guilt, desire, and something more profound lurking beneath the surface. It was a challenge she felt unprepared to confront. Jared's breathing found its rhythm, his body melting into hers with a serene calm. Yet, Lena found herself wide awake, her gaze fixed upon the ceiling above. The truth of what had transpired hung over her, a burden she could not cast aside. The morning light danced through the expansive windows of the penthouse, casting a gentle, golden glow across the airy living space. The city below stirred with life, its distant hum weaving a subtle tapestry against the serene stillness that enveloped the room. Lena lingered by the kitchen island, clad in one of Jared's oversized shirts, her hair casually tied back, embodying a moment of serene domesticity. Her body was at ease, her muscles unwinding in a manner they hadn't experienced in ages. Jared glided through the kitchen, each motion a seamless dance of skill and familiarity as he crafted the morning meal. The aroma of coffee and warm, toasted bread wafted through the air, intertwining with the subtle hint of citrus from the juice he had poured into 2 glasses. He lifted his gaze to meet hers, his dark eyes locking onto hers for a fleeting moment before he returned his attention to the skillet before him. "Would you like some eggs?" he inquired, his tone relaxed as if the events of the previous night were but a distant memory. Lena nodded, her fingers gently wrapping around the edge of the counter, as if seeking comfort in its solidity. With a hint of uncertainty, she spoke, her voice a touch gentler than she had meant it to be. Understood. With a deft motion, Jared broke a few eggs into a bowl, the yolks gleaming as he whisked them together with a fork, before letting the mixture flow into the sizzling skillet. The gentle sizzle of the eggs broke the stillness that enveloped them, a sound that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. Lena observed him for a moment, her eyes following the contours of his shoulders, noting how his muscles moved beneath the delicate fabric of his t-shirt, with a gentle clearing of her throat. She disrupted the stillness that enveloped the room. Let me weave you a tale about the events of last night." Jared cast a fleeting look behind him, his face a mask of mystery. "What is it that captures your curiosity?" Lena paused, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter with a sense of uncertainty. "What was that?" "Merely a fleeting moment." Jared switched off the stove, placing the fork gently on the counter as he turned to face her completely. His gaze held firm, and his expression bore the weight of gravity. "Are you hoping for this to be a fleeting encounter?" Lena parted her lips to speak, yet the words remained trapped in her throat. She found herself adrift, uncertain of her desires, grappling with the chaotic whirlwind of feelings that danced within her. Before she could utter a word, Jared closed the distance between them, his hand resting on the counter beside her, creating an intimate barrier. "It need not be," he remarked, his voice a soft murmur, his eyes steady and unyielding. Lena sensed her breath catch, her body reacting instinctively to the warmth of his presence. "Jared, my friend." Before she could complete her thought, he swept her up with ease and placed her upon the cool marble counter. Her legs naturally parted, creating space for him as he stepped into the intimate space between them. His hands found their place on her hips, a steady grip that held promise without being harsh. Lena sensed a gentle warmth unfurl within her as he leaned closer, his lips grazing hers in a languid, playful kiss. "I'm not finished with you," he whispered against her lips, his voice heavy with a yearning that sent a shiver through her core. Lena's hands discovered his shoulders, her fingers weaving into the fabric of his shirt as he kissed her once more, in a manner that sent her head spinning. As he withdrew, his eyes held a depth that was both shadowy and fervent, brimming with an emotion that set her heart racing. And then he fell to his knees. As Jared knelt before her, Lena felt a sudden rush of warmth, her hands instinctively gripping his shoulders for balance. His hands glided gently along her legs, lifting the fabric of the shirt just enough to reveal more of her skin. His lips met hers, a gentle yet purposeful caress, igniting a surge of warmth within her. "Jared, and so..." She started her tale, yet the words slipped away, transforming into a gentle, wavering whisper, as his lips settled into their rightful position. The feeling washed over her, a blend of softness and fervor that had her holding on tightly. As she pressed her fingers into his shoulders, a silent connection formed between them. It wasn't long before the tension within her grew, her body reacting to his touch with an unmistakable sense of urgency. As the moment reached its zenith, she leaned closer to him, a breath of tumultuous rhythm as she sought to regain her composure. Jared rose slowly, his hands trailing back down her legs as he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both gentle and commanding. As he withdrew, his eyes locked onto hers, his expression grave, his gaze unwavering. "This doesn't have to end," he said, his voice a whisper of resolve, carrying the weight of unspoken tales. Lena gazed up at him, her chest still rising and cascading in a haphazard manner. "What does that signify?" Jared's hands found their place on her hips once more, his hold unwavering. "It signifies we can continue this journey as long as our hearts desire it." Lena paused, her thoughts swirling as she sought to unravel the meaning behind his words. "And when one of us no longer wishes to continue, then it comes to a close," Jared remarked, his tone unwavering and straightforward. "No difficulty, emotions." Lena gazed up at him, her eyes scanning his face for any flicker of doubt, any whisper that he wasn't to speak with utmost sincerity. Yet, his gaze remained unwavering, his expression inviting, and for the first time in ages, she sensed a spark of assurance. "All right," she murmured gently, her voice just a breath above silence. Jared's lips curled into a subtle smile, his hands gripping her hips as he leaned closer, gently pressing his lips to hers in a kiss that spoke of both promise and comfort. "Very well," he responded, his soft and inviting. As he withdrew, a subtle wave of relief cascaded over Lena, the burden of uncertainty easing just a bit. Uncertainty enveloped her, a mysterious path stretching before her. Yet in this moment, it was sufficient. For the moment, she was open to discovering the path ahead. The days that came after were filled with fleeting instances and a deep, unspoken connection. Lena and Jared found their groove, their bond growing stronger even with the silent lines they had drawn. They remained silent about the future, leaving unspoken the nature of what was unfolding between them. Instead, they merely inhabited the realm they had woven, a tapestry of gentle caresses and fleeting looks, of hushed conversations and intertwined breaths. As the evening unfolded, and the sun sank beneath the skyline, casting the city in vibrant shades of orange and pink, Lena stood by the expansive windows, lost in the moment. The scene unfolded before her, a vibrant tapestry of life and energy in the city below. Yet her gaze was drawn to something far more captivating. Jared lingered in the shadows, his arms enveloping her in a warm embrace, gently wrapped around her waist, his chin resting softly on her shoulder. "You're rather silent today," he whispered, his voice soft and comforting as it brushed against her ear. Lena reclined, allowing herself to sink into the moment. She leaned into him, her hands gently resting on his arms. In a gentle whisper, she shared her thoughts. Jared pressed a kiss to the side of her neck, his lips lingering for a moment, weaving a tender moment between them. "What is it about?" Lena paused, her eyes drawn to the distant horizon. "Concerning us," she confessed. Jared's arms enveloped her, his breath a gentle warmth against her skin. "What is our tale?" Lena spun around in his embrace, her gaze locking onto his. "Where does this belong, Jared? And then, what unfolds next?" Jared's gaze softened as he gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face, a tender moment unfolding between them. "It travels to any place we desire," he declared, his tone unwavering. "There's no need to unravel everything at this moment." Lena scanned his face, seeking any hint of uncertainty, yet found none. His eyes sparkled with clarity, his expression inviting, and in that moment, She found the courage to trust him for the very first time. "Very well," she murmured, her voice a gentle breeze, almost lost in the air. Jared's lips curved into a faint smile, his hands settling on her hips as he leaned in, brushing his lips against hers in a kiss that spoke of both promise and reassurance. "All right," he murmured, drawing her nearer. In that moment, as they embraced, the city unfolded before them, vibrant and infinite. Lena felt a tranquil calm envelop her. The burden of doubt begins to ease ever so slightly. Uncertainty loomed ahead, a mystery yet to unfold. But in this moment, it was all she needed. For the moment, they sufficed.